So here I am, talking about Lost again. It's been a little bit since I started talking about this. I feel like I say that. I feel like I said that the last time I did one of these, but today I'm going to be talking about Lost Season 1, Episode 12, whatever the case may be. This is the second flashback-centric episode for Kate. At this point in Season 1, we're going to start getting multiple, we're going to start getting second flashback episodes for characters. Sawyer will have another one. Locke and Saeed and Charlie will all have other flashbacks. We still got a Boone flashback, a Jin, Hurley flashback. And then, of course, Jack and Kate will each get their third centric episode towards the end, and then the finale is kind of like a shared centric amongst the various characters. This, I mentioned it's Kate's episode. It's coming right at the heels of all the best Cowboys have daddy issues, which was this big epic episode I mentioned. It kind of felt like a mid-season finale before they even had mid-season finales. So this was somewhat of a slower episode. I've talked about this before. You could maybe consider this a filler episode, even though I don't believe there's any such thing as a filler episode in Lost, since the main, central storyline, which even though it doesn't feel that big, it does have big ramifications for, the show. The case in mention, the Halliburton case that belonged to the late Marshall, it's of course filled with guns and ammo, which is a big deal. The existence of guns becomes a big deal in the show at this point, and will continue on all the way into season 2. And I feel like it goes away a little bit towards season 3. It's not as relevant, and then by the time of season 4 and 4, 5, and 6, it's just kind of like everybody has guns. Don't worry about where they came from. They got guns. Who cares? With seasons 1 and 2, I feel like there was much more. The creators talked about it. There was much more tracking of the guns and who had the guns, and making sure that there was that showing the passing along of the guns. Like the Marshall's gun had a very clear path throughout the show until it disappeared at the end of season 2. We never learned what happened to the Marshall gun after season 2. Some random other used it and whatnot. But so yeah, that's like the main storyline. Is Kate and Sawyer, they're wandering in the jungle. They find the waterfall, which is a very iconic Lost location, which is interesting because I feel like it only shows up in maybe 3 episodes. I know it shows up in this episode. We see it in everyone's favorite episode, Expose, and then it shows up again in 3:16 in season 5 when they return from Los Angeles and arrive in 1977. So I think it's only in 3 episodes, unless I'm missing an episode. It might show up again in season 1. I can't be certain, but I feel like it doesn't. If it does, I'm gonna look foolish. But so it's interesting. It's such an iconic location from Lost, I feel like, and it's not featured all that much, which I suppose maybe kind of true for a lot of Lost locations. I mean, you have kind of like the mainstays, the beach camp, the hatch, the barracks, but then something like the Pearl or the Beechcraft crash site. Those are very much as iconic as the other more permanent locations, but you don't see them as much. I think the Pearl you only see in a couple episodes. Question mark, Expose, and then the Mr. Echo, the Cost of Living. Mr. Echo's last episode in season 3. So again, that's another one I feel like you only see it in maybe 3 episodes. They didn't find a way to work the Pearl into season 5 when they were actually with the Dharma Initiative. But back to this episode. The storyline with Kate, I mean, you know, a lot of people dislike the character of Kate. She's not my favorite, not my least favorite either. I understand the significance and importance of the character of Kate. You know, Kate is the female lead. The show is very much Jack and Kate. Obviously, Jack is the main character, but then you have Kate being the female lead of the show. People talk about, you know, the favorites like Locke and Ben and Desmond and Charlie, but it's still, the show is still very much about Jack and Kate, and I can at least acknowledge that. And, you know, she's doing what she always does, which is climb trees. I feel like it's one of her most useful things she does in the show, besides just following people when they don't want to be followed. Yeah. And I feel like kind of where this episode thrives, really, is in the subplots, you know, the B or C plots. Even though whatever the case may, even though the case, the Halliburton case plot, feels kind of like a B plot a little bit too within everything that's been going on. Because, you know, Claire went missing. We're not really talking about that. We're not really talking about the others. Locke and Boone found this thing. We're not really talking about that. So it still kind of feels like this little calm, this little lull, which is, again, was why it's somewhat close to a filler episode. And this episode and the next 2 episodes, Hearts and Minds Special, they kind of fill in this Claire missing time period. You know, it's just kind of, you know, stuff is still happening, there's still significant stuff happening, but it's all kind of, you know, moving along a little bit slowly waiting for Homecoming, which will be the Claire returning and the final confrontation with Ethan. And then after that, we start building a little bit more into the Hatch, which we don't even find out about the Hatch until Hearts and Mind. It's teased throughout this episode. You know, Boone and Locke are up to something. You don't know what. They're grabbing the axe. You don't know what they found. So it's teasing that a little bit, setting up the next episode, which is nice. So that's like one of the B plots. It's a very small one. And then there's another B plot you have Saeed and Shannon. They're trying to like figure out the notations of Rousseau that Saeed stole. And because, you know, it's written in French, and Shannon knows a little bit of French. And of course, this is where they start to, you know, bond or whatever, and that relationship kind of begins here, which will go on to a little bit of season 2. And then the final sort of B plot line is the stuff with Charlie. He's still kind of dealing with everything that happened in the previous episode with Claire going missing, and he almost died, and he's clearly not in a good place at this point. And so Rose kind of comes along and helps him, which I liked a lot. I feel like the stuff with Charlie and Rose is probably my favorite parts of this particular episode. I think rewatching it now, it's been a little bit since I've watched an episode of Lost, a couple months. This might be the first Lost I've seen in 2020. That doesn't sound right, but it could possibly be, but I don't think it is. But one of the things I noticed first right away is the music is great. The music is great. I feel like I'm going to say this every time I talk about an episode, but the music is just phenomenal right off the bat. But the stuff with Rose and Charlie was really good. I think Rose is such an underappreciated character, especially what she has to do in season 2. I know her storyline kind of fades away once she's reunited with Bernard. She has that season 2 episode SOS, and then she's kind of gone for most of season 3 until she reappears. And then she doesn't have a whole much to do in 5 and 6. She's a little bit, and her and Bernard are in a little bit of season 4, but season 4 is such a short season, so it's kind of all evens out a little bit, which of course I think is fine for that character. I've always liked the characters of Rose and Bernard in the way that their story just kind of ends in the middle of the show, and that these two characters can just, you know, be happy and enjoy life even though this crazy shit is going on. They can build their cabin and relax and retire and not have to worry about it. I thought that was always nice. And then I like the ending of this episode where Shannon is singing the Somewhere Beyond the Sea in French, because she remembers from the Finding Nemo kid. She tells that story tells that story to Saeed. But yeah, you know, it's a fine episode. Flashbacks are nothing special. It's just like Kate robbing a bank. I like the little bit where her like temporary bank robber boyfriend says like you're crazy or whatever, Maggie, and she goes, my name's not Maggie. I feel like that's a thing that she does in her flashback episodes. Is she kind of like dismisses people, like my name's not Annie, my name's not Maggie. She's kind of like, I'm done with you. You don't even know my real name. Moving on. I don't care. I thought that was kind of cool. There's no lines that really stand out in this episode. I did like the exchange that Sawyer and Michael and Hurley have, where Michael's like, you're not gonna pick the lock of a Halliburton case. And then Hurley comes along and Hurley just starts laughing at him for thinking he can do it. And of course, the little moment where Sawyer is up high and trying to break the thing by dropping it to the ground, trying to break the case. And of course, as soon as he drops it to the ground, Kate just runs up and, you know, runs away with it, showing how easy it really is to outsmart Sawyer sometimes. I mean, he should have seen that coming. But yeah, it was a pretty good episode. Like I said, it is kind of that calm right after, you know, that like relaxing right after whatever the case may be, and then sort of again also the lull. It's like the calm after the storm, and then at the same time the calm before the storm, because we're gearing up to homecoming. So it's just kind of right in between these two climactic episodes. But yeah, that's all I've got to say about whatever the case may be.